I'm going to have you start regardless because you started earlier. So go ahead.
Uh, Hello, everyone. Um, so, thank you for joining us tonight on Inside Movies Galore. Tonight's movie is Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, also known as Kiss in Attack of the Phantoms, also known as Attack of the Phantoms, depending on which region you're watching the film. It was a
Crikey.
1978 made for TV movie originally aired on NBC and produced by Hanna-Barbera, the cartoon studio known primarily for Scooby-Doo and other classics from the 60s and 70s. Um, so yeah,
That
this
really
was
shows
a
the plot, by the way.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we're definitely gonna get to that, but the it's just an interesting thing that they're known for being having created a lot of classic cartoons, and yet this was a live action thing that they did. But yeah, this
Well,
was
and actually,
actually what.
I read up on it. Actually, stop
There is cartoons, right?
park that had to do with Six Flags, I believe.
It was Magic Mountain in California where they filmed, and
Yep.
yeah, and it was interesting that this was Kiss. Just for those of you who don't know, obviously Kiss is the biggest band in the world, as they like to call themselves, and in 1978 they were at the height of their commercial popularity. They had just had their famous Alive album, which popularized and revolutionized the concept of a live album. And they then had the best selling album Destroyer come out right after that. And then they just had hit after hit album. And obviously, hugely successful concert tours and television appearances, merchandising. And so, what's the next logical step? Make a movie. And the original
Laser
concept,
eyes.
yeah, the original concept
Fire
was
The
to,
next logical step.
yeah, the original concept was for them to make Star Wars crossed with A Hard Day's Night, which Star Wars, of course, this was 78, so Star Wars had come out the previous year. That was the biggest thing in the world. Kiss was the biggest band in the world. And then, what's the next logical step? Make a movie that crosses those two things.
It
And
wasn't
What could
that
go
successful.
yeah, what could possibly go wrong?
Laser eyes.
Yes, many laser eyes. So
Mind
let's start with Ryan, because you're new. What did you think of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park?
Well, I should probably preface my statements as being that I've been a Kiss fan since I was 3 years old. Um, I actually remember seeing bits and pieces of the TV movie when it originally aired, which also, if for anybody that doesn't know, was actually the second highest rated TV movie of that year, right behind the miniseries Shogun.
That's
That's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was big. I mean, it's a steaming pile of poo. Let's not
Yeah.
let's just be real about it. It's not a good movie by any stretch of the It's funny and fun to watch. It's like kind of the ridiculousness of the whole thing. And I mean, it was an entirely set up to fail because nobody saw a script. The members of the band were basically given their lines before the start of the scene, and then they kind of rehearsed their lines a couple times, and then it was like and roll, which is why the dialogue is about as stiff as a board. And also, they didn't record. They had to have the band members come back in to loop their voices for where the audio wasn't good, and Peter Criss was MIA, which is why if you watch the movie and you're go, wow, I didn't know Peter Criss did voices for Hanna-Barbera cartoons. No, he didn't. It was one of their stock players that did Peter Criss's voice.
Right.
But it was just, yeah, it's one of those things of, when I think at that point, I think Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was for sure Kiss's jumping of the shark moment, as far as, where it just it started off as just, for me, that like when I think of Kiss and the things that make me smile about Kiss is when I think of their early years, you know, like they're from like 74 to 77, where it was like still raw. It was a little dangerous. It was a little, edgy. By the time you get to Kiss Meets the Front of the Park, this is the point where, okay, now they've had dolls and models and radios and record players and all sorts and baseball cards and all sorts of stuff. So it got to this point where it became a circus, family entertainment. And this is that point where it just kind of finally, it was the tipping point.
A circus, you say? A circus, you say? Could it have been a psycho circus?
Oh, gravy, it could, yeah. And that's actually funny because it seems like how history kind of repeated itself, because then, flash forward to 1996, the reunion happens, and it starts off as this kind of like, oh my God, they're back together, and it seems so awesome. And then it was just like, the drip of merchandise just kept flowing and flowing, and it gets more ridiculous and more ridiculous. And it's, there's Kiss condoms, there's Kiss coffins, there's Kiss, anything. If it'll sit still long enough for Gene Simmons to slap a logo on it and patent it and trademark it, it is out there with Kiss's name on it. I remember going to get Kiss Psycho. Right? Kiss the flamethrower. Kiss the
breakfast cereal.
Kiss the breakfast. Honestly, that is the one thing there never was. There was never a Kiss. There was never a Kiss a breakfast cereal. There were color forms, shrinky dinks, all sorts of paraphernalia. No cereal.
There should have been though, shouldn't there?
Really should have. There really should have, because you could. It would have totally been. It would have been a knockoff Lucky Charms deal.
Yeah,
with like the marshmallows would be the shapes of their makeup.
You're not really a legitimate children's product unless you're a box of cereal, right?
Yeah, Ninja Turtles had cereal.
Yeah, Ninja Turtle. So I guess they never would. However, when I went to go get Sonic Boom at Walmart when it came out, this was 2000.
That was their 2009 album.
Okay, thank you. And they had for $10, I kid you not, $10, basically what amounted to is a king-size bag of Kiss M&Ms for $10.
Wow.
Okay, not plain M&Ms, mind you, not peanuts, no, not peanut butter. There were no pretzels, just milk chocolate M&Ms.
They were just like black and white, right?
Yes, they were black and red.
That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah,
No.
It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Like what?
Well, just for historical context, so when Kiss first debuted on the music scene in 1973, they hadn't quite developed their personas yet, but once they did, they were sort of not really well regarded, and they had some albums that they recorded while they were on tour. They just kept churning them out, but they just didn't generate into sales really, even though they had an outlandish persona and outlandish concerts. And then that's when Alive came out, and that's when you got to feel the experience of a Kiss show and just the sheer energy and the spectacle and the all of it, how big it was. And that album revolutionized the concept of a live album. And
I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted to interject something too. It was actually a really excellent marketing ploy too for Kiss, because they weren't selling a lot of studio records, but they were, but when you went to go see Kiss live after they released the Alive record, they did a tour, and you actually could buy the record at the show. So not only were you be able to, go to see them live, but what's a more cool souvenir than taking the show home?
Exactly. Well, and nowadays, how common is that?
Very common.
And then
I got junk from a Rob Zombie concert once.
Yeah. Well, and then you had the fact that it was
a better live band.
You had Paul Stanley, who was talking is talking about the fact that when they first started doing merchandising, it was seen as very uncool, but to them, they always saw it as going hand in hand with rock and roll, and it really goes hand in hand with what Kiss is. They were always about just the spectacle of it and just getting their image out there, and it just that's kind of why they are what they are.
I can kind of see that. 'Cause I've always found their music kind of bland. Like nothing about it really like excites me very much.
Well, I love Kiss. For the thing I'll say is that I do feel like they are. If you didn't have the image of Kiss and you just had the music, you'd have some good songs, but it wouldn't really stand out from the pack of like AC/DC or other like 70s hard rock bands necessarily. But that's the whole idea of Kiss, is that they're just this larger than life thing, and that's why the concerts are so big and everything is big, But yeah, that's
So
kind
what-
of but that's kind of
Okay.
What was your take?
the background
on this
for
film?
it.
Me?
Yep, go ahead.
It was really bad. This movie
Yep.
is just so bad. It's like the plot makes no sense. The acting is awful. It's just, I mean, it's really cheesy, so I like it in like it's so bad it's almost good, but it's also not good.
But you could get a hell of a drinking
Also
game out of
understand
it.
that three of you were actually did this in outfit.
I'm sorry,
Somewhat.
you were breaking up.
Christ.
I understand that you, Katie Cadavra, and Ryan were actually on an episode of doing this film
Deadgar.
in
Yes.
Kiss outfit.
For Deadger's Dark Coffin Classics, we did an episode where we showed this movie and we dressed up like Kiss. We had an all-female Kiss band, and then we had other people dressed up like other rock stars. It was actually a really fun episode. It made the movie palatable.
It's available on
did.
Vimeo. That's how I saw
It
it.
is.
That's how I watched it too.
Vimeo.com/DDCC if you want to check out our episode.
Yeah, I thought that was a neat way to do it, because I assumed that you managed to kind of work it in within the commercial breaks or whatever that would have existed in the TV special anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Something like that, at least close to it.
Yeah, that's the idea. And the version you showed was the European version, which apparently was the better version.
It was. So we showed the European version, which was allegedly better. I have no desire in that case to ever see the American version.
I saw a few clips from the American version that weren't in the cut that I saw. Like there was some worse dialogue that was left out of the European cut. Like apparently Ace Frehley did not have enough lines initially, they felt, and so they wrote some more in for him and some things like that. But they'd say stuff like, good question, Catman. What do you compute, Space Ace? Insufficient data at the moment, Star Child. It's
What the fuck?
yeah, they'd say things like that, and so luckily they managed to cut out a lot of that stuff.
It was the 70s. I just assumed people talked like that. I don't know.
Yeah. But what does Katie think of the film?
Oh, I pretty much can mirror what Celeste said. Like it's really, really bad, but it's fun at the same time. So, and it was really fun to do that show as well. I think.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun.
It was a really fun thing to do, and I will always have fond memories of this movie because of doing that
Same
show.
here.
Yeah, so it has a warm spot in my heart, and then of course anything that's Kiss just reminds me of Ryan, so I like it for that reason too. But really, as far as it being a great movie, like I tried to brush up on it again last night, and not only did I fall asleep watching it, but I fell asleep watching it at like 10:30 and didn't wake up till 3:30 in the morning. Like I fell hard. So
That's the intended purpose.
yeah, I don't know what that tells you about this movie, but
Normal.
clearly It's not my
So-
favorite, but
So you pull the trigger of his love gun? Is that what you're trying to say?
all day. Yep.
Oh, I knew it. Which
Gross.
speaking of female Kiss members or whatever, the album cover of Love Gun has women with the Kiss makeup on it as well as the band. So there is a precedent for it.
Yes.
But,
Yeah, I think we were cuter than the original band members, but that's
Well,
not really saying
probably.
much.
Way cuter.
yeah, I mean, Gene Simmons is not exactly cute. I don't think.
Very
Not that he-
fuzzy.
Not
I
that he
don't-
was meant to be cute, but still.
He was cuter in Trick or Treat.
Yeah, so cute. I didn't even recognize him when I saw it.
Why
Perfect.
was he like
That's why.
tiger dragon? Why was he like Kintaro, like tall and shooting fire? Like what was that?
So he could have laser eyes.
Well, his the demon.
Fire.
So the designs of their personas, they were things that they had all come up with, and Gene Simmons was the demon, and not only was his makeup somewhat, demonic influence, but his costumes tended to be sort of a mixture of like a vampire and a little bit of Japanese behind it as well with his hair. So I think that's kind of that's part of what made them stand out.
They had they fought samurais and like various monsters. Like what the fuck was this?
Yeah,
Like,
well, it's
like an
well, and
Clark
also for
film.
also for historical context, keep in mind that this was at around the time when Marvel Comics began publishing the first of many, 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 many more series of Kiss comics yet to come that got published by all kinds of other comic companies. But yeah, so at that time you had Kiss Comics, you had the first issue of which the red ink they had mixed in with vials of their own blood, which got delivered to the printing press in an armored truck.
Wow.
Yeah, so the red in the first issue had mixtures of all four band members' own blood in them.
These are valuable, aren't they?
That's cool. I'd get that.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, that's the thing. They were really pushing the envelope in a lot of different areas, and as much as we may look back on them in whatever way we're going to do that, however we choose to, I
Just
think
whatever
that you
you
definitely
think.
have to give them credit for pushing the boundaries. What does Brandon think about the film?
Well, Brandon thinks that I should have been a bigger Kiss fan before watching it. I always thought of Kiss as an okay band with some good songs, but a lot of it being the performance really that made them as great as they were. But I feel like when I watched this, I felt like I was watching a Scooby-Doo cartoon, which is
Nailed it.
but I thought to myself that if I was really a Kiss super fan, if I had read the comics, had the figurines, known all the Kiss lore, this would be the thing I would be on my like, hands and knees worshiping as it came out through the door, because this is, to me, this is what this was made for. It was made for the true ultra Kiss fan, and I could feel that like throughout the entirety of it.
Mm-hmm. Although the super fans, the fans at the time, and the band themselves, and critics were not terribly happy. Although subsequently, the film has gotten a cult following from Kiss fans. So more than likely, as the lore expanded, then indeed it did become that which you just said. So
Yeah.
and apparently the idea of the talismans came from comics. So
Yeah, that was.
So
I
in a way, this is kind of a superhero movie when you think about it.
I suppose. I mean, I had no idea like what their thing was, and so
Just
when
makes
that like just
it-
suddenly showed up, it was like, what?
Yeah, well, their personas, they're the demon, the Star Child, Catman, and Space Ace, or the Spaceman. So they're all rather superhero-ish in their designations. So that has a precedent as well. And But yeah, that's the speaking of the Scooby Doo stuff. I mean, obviously it's Hanna Barbera doing it, so without a doubt, I'm sure that the plotting gets some inspiration from Scooby Doo.
I think they
But
just took a Scooby Doo script and like threw Kiss in it.
more than likely, except then in 2015, you had the actual Scooby Doo and Kiss crossover movie.
That happened?
Yeah,
Fuck.
it did. Well,
That's
Scooby Doo
early.
crossed over with Batman, with Kiss, with WWE twice. With
I still like the one with zombies. That was the best
with-
one.
yeah,
The Harlem Globetrotters.
Harlem Globetrotters, Vincent Price. They did. Just recently, they did Supernatural. I think they had a crossover with them.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No, it's true.
Jeez.
But
The best one was the Robot Chicken with Friday the 13th. You need to look that up. 'Cause that's pretty great. 'Cause they all fucking die.
Now, what does Andrew think about this extravaganza?
Well, I have to say I absolutely love this movie soundtrack. The rest of it was crap.
Here, here.
I can agree with you on that.
Even more than like the crappy acting, it was just the director just fell through time and time again. It's just like, okay, one character's like most memorable line is going to go ack at the end of a movie. Okay, all right, and Gene Simmons, you can't even tell what the hell he's saying.
Yeah, he had that like voice mixing or whatever. It's like, I guess he's supposed to be a demon apparently, so that makes sense. But
That was
why?
too much.
Exactly.
And then the talismans, they kept it in an unlocked box, in an unlocked glass case, in a home with no security whatsoever.
Yeah, and this guy who makes these animatronics at a theme park that isn't Disney World can somehow invent a laser gun.
Yeah, the plot was weak.
That interacts with the magic of the fucking talismans somehow. Like, what is
Like, dude, do you know how rich you could be just by, not working at an amusement park? Like, go
Selling
to
laser
NASA,
guns.
for God's sake.
We're figuring out the plot of this movie.
Then he wouldn't be the fan.
What's interesting is that Gordon Hessler, the director of this film, he asked, I think Amicus Horror Prehammer, film director before he a movie teacher, basically. He directed the Oblong Box version
Good.
of Desaad. Scream and Scream Again, Cry of the Banshee, Murders in the Rue Morgue. These were all and the Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
What?
Good movies.
Bad.
Those are great movies.
So-
How did this happen?
Which
Well, I
is
think it was
funny.
just,
How the
I think it's just kind of the corporate entity kind of jerry rigged with it, as George Lucas would say. But I think also, think about before and since. Think about music, like we talked about last week. Think about musicians that make it into the world of film and how very rarely that ever works out. I mean, the best examples of that would be Purple Rain and 8 Mile, that I can think of. And, then you kind of go down the ladder from there. One thing I'll say about this film, because I enjoyed it for what it was really cheesy and just not good on an objective level, but, I do like Scooby-Doo. I love Kiss. And it kind of reminded me of 70s superhero TV, like Wonder Woman and the Amazing Spider-Man short-lived TV series.
They had the same effects guy.
Yeah, not very great, but still kind of amusing for what it is. Great music, of course, and just kind of one of those ones you kind of like to make fun of. Well, one thing I will say is that I did enjoy it more than other things that I've seen that were musicians doing movies, particularly like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. It as a whole film that doesn't work at all because at least Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, at least that has a plot as flawed as it is. But Michael Jackson's Moonwalker really, it's kind of hard to even talk about unless you talk about each individual segment. Because even the Smooth Criminal segment, that's like the only part that has something of a plot. Everything else is just disjointed nonsense, really. But, interesting, well produced, music videos basically, but no coherence whatsoever.
Yeah. Unrelated thing. I just found out that John Landis did Thriller, and I was like, wow, he was involved in everything. Great.
You just found out about that?
Yes.
You got a lot to learn, buddy.
I do. Like, I had never before I saw this, I had never seen Kiss. Like Kiss. Like, I'd seen people in the costumes. I'd seen pictures of them. I'd never seen them in the costumes moving around.
And
what's interesting,
and having done so, what did you think of the film?
Well, the movie was pretty fucking bad. We're not gonna, we're not gonna lie. It was kind of awesome in its own, just like, what is this shit way? Like when the magic like powers started happening, like that kind of got my attention because it's like, wait, what? And like the stuff with the talismans, like it's everybody's like apparently they are Kiss comics, but fuck. I had like a long Facebook status about it where I was just like, what's happening? What's going on? What the hell? Because I knew of Kiss, but I came into this more or less knowing nothing really about Kiss. In fact, there's a Family Guy episode where they parody this particular movie. Apparently, like Peter's trying to watch something called Kiss Saves Santa. It's like some Christmas special. And it has like these little clip moments where like you only see bits and pieces of this thing in the episode, and it's just crazy stuff. Like they're in a pterodactyl nest, and it's like, oh no, we're in trouble. It's like, wait, there's one thing pterodactyls can't stand: the screech of a guitar. Plays some notes, the pterodactyls like fly away, and it's like, yeah, this is basically what I'm watching. And in my head, I'm still calling this damn movie "Kiss Saves Santa" because, like, I can't unsee it.
Yeah, I have not seen the Scooby-Doo and Kiss crossover movie, but I would like to, just for the sake of comparison, because, like we have all kind of agreed, this plot of this film is very, 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 very similar to Scooby-Doo. Although I really like Scooby-Doo, and I like.
Wouldn't it be great if it was the same plot? Wouldn't it be great if it was like the actual same plot, just like a little bit more well done?
Well, it pretty much is, but
I'm not myself.
What'd you say?
Being unbelievably bad for some corny ass reason, I enjoy watching it.
Yeah, believe me, I've seen way worse in terms of movies in general and movies starring musicians. I mean, this wasn't good by any means, but it was at least entertaining.
But the Dead Drew Start Coffin Classics part, that was good, right?
Your sketches were fine, yeah. Although where it's like, oh, I'm just this guy. I don't know how I got here. We know that's you, dead guy. What's
Let's be honest. It was a good match with the acting in the movie. I think we parodied our own acting very well. I think it fit very well.
I think so too.
Well,
maybe I wanted to talk about this was we talked about one dealing with Gene Simmons. A movie that I know technically Kiss is involved with.
Well, as the stars, they were in. As the stars, yes, but they were also in the movie Detroit Rock City, which was all about Kiss fans.
I love that movie.
Yeah, trying to get to
it.
True. And there is a recent film that Todd Sheets is involved with, in that at the end of a zombie apocalypse, Gene Simmons in Kiss uniform steps out. a movie called Dreaming Purple Neon. A
It's like
thing I
a
want.
psychosis fantasy thing, right?
Kind of. So it was kind of hilarious to see fully dressed like end of a zombie film.
Yeah. Well, but I guess that the thing to also say with this film is that it wasn't very well. It was very highly watched, because again they were the biggest thing ever. Not very well received initially. The band members forbade anybody working for them, like in the staff or anything. They forbade them to mention the movie in their presence for a long time. Yeah, because they were very embarrassed by it. But then it subsequently has become a cult following with Kiss fans. I think for no other reason that it is sort of this amusing relic of the past, but also that it does portray them as the kind of superheroes that they fancy themselves to be. But it also, in a weird way, that plus, like I mentioned before, the Scooby Doo and Kiss crossover movie formally in 2015, so it's like it speaks to the longevity of the band, of the idea of Kiss, what they
Actually,
represent. What? You know what?
Dustin, do we lose him?
I think Dustin died. I think Gene Simmons killed him with his magical fire powers.
Oh, there you are. Everything just froze for a second. What the fuck?
Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, well, this actually made me think a little bit of the Star Wars Christmas special. Like,
Yeah,
in
I was
many
actually
ways.
gonna. Yeah, you beat me to it. I was gonna bring
Yeah.
that up. It came out in the same year. Same thing, biggest movie ever. Although I have to say, this is infinitely better than the
Yeah,
Star
way
Wars Holiday
better.
Special.
I don't know. I like watching people watch the Christmas special.
I mean, I've watched it more than once, but I have to say, it is almost unwatchable.
It's
But that's
so bad.
but that's
It's so
part of what
slow.
that's part of what makes it kind of funny. It is because it's so unwatchable. But like, I have to say, just this movie is infinitely better than that holiday
Oh
special.
yes. Oh my God, yes.
In order to, so George Lucas had to bribe Carrie Fisher to do a commentary track for Star Wars. And what she requested was she wanted a copy of the Christmas special that she could play to like get people out of her house at the end of parties. That's a real story. You can look that up.
That's good.
Alrighty.
Yeah,
Is there anyone else who has anything else to say?
Actually, I had one thing I had thought about when watching this movie, and I don't know why it didn't come to me when we were doing this. It was it reminded me a lot of the Aquabats. For those familiar with them, and their TV and their multiple
Yeah.
TV entries. Again, very similar. Of course, obviously, I'm going to guess that the inspiration, of course, came from Kiss originally in some aspects, but that very comic booky, superpower kind of cheesy feel that they have. Though I think they took the comedy aspect to a whole new level with the Aquabats. But I really feel that they draw a lot of parallels, especially watching their newer shows. I've been rewatching a lot of that on Netflix and reacquainting myself. But I think it's that if a lot of the people who have the love for Kiss, much like I enjoyed the Aquabats music, would probably have found a lot more fun with that movie.
Well, the point cannot be stated enough that Kiss really was huge they were huge in their day, but they have remained hugely influential in a lot of areas, not just their sound and the reinventing what a live performance is, a live album, but also the costumes, the makeup, the look, the feel, the shock aspect, because like Gene Simmons would spit fire and spit blood and fly around on the stage and all kinds of cool stuff, which obviously influenced heavy metal. Like I think of them more as hard rock, but it influenced heavy metal for sure.
Did Alice?
Well, I think it influences that entire genre you know,
Yeah.
any sort of edge to music. I mean, I do makeup for a horror punk band currently that draws tons of inspiration from Kiss, obviously. And you touched on that piece about it being about, you know, the theatrics and about the show. And when Rat Bat Spider gets on stage, they automatically with the makeup, they have that little something extra that the other bands that played before them and will play after them don't have. So
Well, and
I think
wouldn't
that
you agree that that is what does it? You know, that's what gives them that special something that they can't get from not having it.
absolutely. And I think what it does is it takes their talent and it makes it just that much more noticeable.
It showcases
Because
it.
correct.
Well,
Yeah, it gives
it's
people
like you have a
something else
really
to add to it.
it's like you have a really delicious cake and you put this really beautiful icing on top of it, right?
Exactly.
Well, but it's a little bit more than just icing, but it's like the icing itself is a work of art on top of this cake, which internally is its own work of art, you know.
Correct. Different layers of artistic, you know, abilities and the things and all the stuff that goes into that. You know, when I look at the makeup and the outfits and everything that Kiss wears, I know for me, just dressing and making up one member of a band, I know how much I've put into the clothes, you know, the making of the quote unquote costume. It's not really a costume, he wears it all the time, but you know, just the attention to detail and stuff. As an artist, I can appreciate that a lot, and I think the average fan might not understand what all goes into it, but they still are getting something from it. They're still appreciating, and that there's still like that understanding that that took a lot of time and effort, and that's something that we don't see from everybody.
Definitely. Well,
The
no,
other,
if I'm not mistaken, the band they came up with their own designs, and I think they did their own makeup, right?
Which band?
Kiss did.
They actually, I just recently learned that Kiss drew their inspiration from, like, for their makeup looks from, I think, from different comic books. Like Gene Simmons was some, I don't know comics, so some Black Viper or something. I don't know. I don't remember. I'm gonna say it wrong, but I think they got it
Ryan's
from.
not going to be happy.
I know. He went to sleep. I told him to stay up, but he went to sleep. He knows all that stuff better than I do. I forget it all, but
But
I think it was
but
comic book
then
characters.
you do the band's makeup all yourself, right?
Yes.
And so how does that? What do you do to make them different from each other and from that which has come before?
Well, when I first started doing their makeup, I just did it different every single time. Like I first started with Ryan because obviously I had access to him, and after I started dating him, I let him do his makeup like for 2 shows before I was crawling out of my skin to try it. And I just was like, you know, do you think I could? And he was like, yeah, sure, go ahead, thinking it couldn't be any worse than what he was doing on his own. So
Art.
I tried it one time, and it was a big hit. So each time I thought, you know, let me think of something else to do, you know, just to test my own skills, and then to also get to know the materials that I was working with were crap. I mean, I figured that out pretty early on that I needed better materials. And like, so once I started doing the band, we tried a bunch of different things. We actually one time did um, They Live theme. They have a song called And I'm All Out of Bubblegum, if you're familiar with the movie They Live with Roddy Piper.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I did the makeup look of the alien face. I did the band like that. And I had crappy tools at the time. I didn't have good paints. So I didn't do as great of a job as I might be able to do now if we were to revisit that. But it was just experimenting and trying different things. And we eventually did settle on a look that I now repeat pretty much for everybody. And really, the way I got there, like Doug's is a half a skull because Doug has a big beard, and painting Doug's beard is kind of difficult. So that was like a no-brainer. We were always just doing half of a skull. And I chose the look that I did for Jack based on the fact that he has a really round pumpkin-shaped head, and the only skull that really doesn't look ridiculous on him is the one that I do, which doesn't really have a side jaw. It's more of a basic, like old school horror punk look. And then Chris's face is he's one of the more fun ones to do because he has a really pronounced bone structure, so I can just follow his bone structure that's already there, and I give him like fangs and no bottom jaw because he's got some facial hair on the bottom that I can blend in with black and you don't even see it. So that's kind of how I got inspiration for how to do them. And Ryan's, I just sort of settled on the classic skull because even when we go to horror conventions and stuff, it's sort of becomes synonymous with his look and with his character of Ryan Remains. So I just kind of repeat that, and we do different variations on that for horror conventions depending on what cosplay we're doing or whatever. I've done several different looks combined with skulls for him. So really the inspiration for it kind of just came from trial and error, and then being able to settle on something for the band that's just functional, because I usually have less than 2 hours to get all 4 guys done before we start. So if I had more time, I would do more elaborate things probably.
It is really neat to hear you talk about that. One thing that came to my mind as you were talking about that is if you guys remember Batman Forever, you had that gang of people with that kind of neon body paint. That might be kind of interesting to play around with if you were to ever get your hands on that, and that could work well with like stage lighting and things like that.
Body paint?
Yeah.
I don't know if they need to wear less clothes.
Well,
for body paint, yes. I mean, you could face paint with it.
If you've ever seen that scene in the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But
yeah, I know what you're referring to, and I've actually seen makeup artists use that in blacklight situations or like under strobe lights and stuff, and it is really cool. And I think especially with a skull, like I did a skull look this past weekend at Days of the Dead, where I used color, like basically the same colors that are in my hair. I used to sort of highlight the edges, and we were in the after party, and they had all these lights going, and I actually caught a video of my skull makeup in these different lights and as they're changing, and how many different like surfaces that I create with the makeup. I basically create like a 3D look, but obviously it's flat. And it's just neat how the light bounces off of that. So I think I would have a lot of fun playing with some of those neon colors or colors that might only come out under black light or something, where using it as like a highlighter, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of neat things you can do, but that's precisely why there are people like you to be creative and to come up with those kinds of looks, because without that, then you'd have bands that may be good, but they wouldn't have that pizzazz,
It's that little extra.
Absolutely.
One more thing I'd like to mention about Kiss before we
is it just Gene Simmons being weird? He got in the news again recently.
No, back when people didn't like rock music and whatnot, Knights of Satan's Service.
Yeah, that's what they. Yeah, the people that keep thinking that KISS is an acronym for something. They thought it was Knights in Satan's Service, Kids in Satan's Service, Keep It Simple, Stupid. They thought it was all.
Grabbing bonnet off the bed.
What? I think we're overhearing something.
Oh.
Yell at those cats. That's what those are.
They thought it was those acronyms, but in fact, it doesn't stand for anything. It's literally just what it is. It's KISS.
So, but in any case, if anyone anyone else has anything else to add?
Well, I'll say this: it's far better than the Star Wars Holiday Special, and while the individual pieces aren't as good as some of the individual pieces of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, the whole thing of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, it does at least try to have a plot, unlike Moonwalker, which is just truly perplexing. As a whole, I mean. Individually, there's a lot of really standout pieces.
Yeah, and I've
Okay.
seen worse. I've seen worse movies. Like
In
this.
any case,
Yeah, it's like this was at least entertaining. It wasn't good, obviously, but it was at least entertaining.
Good enough.
Good enough
alrighty.
to not make you want to
Well,
stab
in any
yourself.
case, I thank you guys. I thank you guys for bearing with me with the technical difficulties. Thank you, Shanta, for inviting Dane back on.
I didn't. It was Dustin.
But
Yeah.
gotcha, Dustin.
Credit.
Thank you. In any case, we're gonna wrap up the show here. So 23 again. Thank you very much. So why don't we start with you, Shanta? What you do?
I am Celeste. I am from Dedgar's Dark Coffin Classics, which is a horror host show. I am a co-host on the show along with Dedgar Winter and Victoria Bathory. And if you want to see our stuff, you can look up Dedgar's Dark Coffin Classics or go to vimeo.com/ddcc. We also run the Dead Girls, which is female fans of Dedgar, and we also co-host shows, help promote it, which also includes Katie Cadaver.
Yes, it does.
And you
That's
guys,
a great segue.
and
Thanks
you
so
guys
much.
reviewed these movies,
Yeah.
You guys reviewed this movie, didn't you?
We did.
That's how we saw it. Vimeo.com. What?
/DDCC.
DDCC. I thought it was like DCCC, and I was like, wait.
No, if you think Dedgar's Dark Coffin Classics,
Any-
DDCC.
What do you? Where are you from?
Who is it?
Katie.
Me? Okay, I couldn't hear.
Go
I am
ahead.
Katie Cadaver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And as Celeste mentioned, I'm also a dead girl on Dedgar's Dark Coffin Classics, as well as the makeup artist for the horror punk band Rat Bat Spider. Earlier, you guys heard my boyfriend Ryan Remains, who is the lead singer of Rat Bat Spider. I'm also out of Milwaukee Horror Punk. Check them out on Facebook,
Cool.
by the way, and Bandcamp and Reverb Nation and Spotify and Amazon and all that good stuff. Yes, and I'm all over Facebook too. Katie Cadaver on Facebook, Third Eye Open on Instagram. I do makeup, I do vests and different clothes, and I'm also a burlesque performer as well.
Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from?
Yes, I'm known as Septum Sen to my small audience online. I have a YouTube channel called Septum Sen versus the World. We're all about physical media. This upcoming winter, we're going to be experimenting with some motion capture technology. So it's going to be interesting, probably very bad, and I look forward to continuing to run the channel.
Great.
Cool. Dane, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from?
All right. I am Dane Kyle, independent writer, director, and producer of films out of Charlotte, North Carolina for the present time. You can connect with me on YouTube. My YouTube channel is The Dane Kyle, Keil. And there you can see some of my short film work, and including Eternus, which was shown on Edgar's Dark Coffin Classics once, and it's going to be shown again. Thank you, Shanta. And also known as Celeste. Let's see. What else? I got into a horror anthology feature film, my short film I did, which they haven't added me to their IMDb yet, so I hesitate to say anything overly specific yet, but believe me, the further news of that is coming. And David had let me know of a different horror anthology that I might try for. That's
Yep.
the deadline is in March of next year, so I might be less crunched for time. But if I could manage it, it'd be cool to try for that one too. But yeah, just a lot of interesting things out there that I'm doing, and more interesting things coming down the pipeline.
Okay. Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from?
Yeah, I'm Andrew. I'm living in the middle of rural Wisconsin, and therefore I really don't do a whole lot related to this apart from personal interest.
What part of rural Wisconsin?
Something about Reeves.
I am between Eau Claire and Wausau right now.
Oh, okay.
We have
That's
award-winning cheese shops in the area, and cows and deer. Many
Sounds like
deer.
my area.
Yeah.
You got
Like,
cows. You got cows, do you? So why don't you move along?
Because my wife has a teaching job here. Actually, one of the things that I do a lot of is I do a lot of tabletop gaming when I can find people. Right now, I'm working on a game for my wife's, let's see, 5th and 6th grade class about the alternate history Revolutionary War. So I've been doing a lot of research on that lately, which has been far more interesting than I had expected. I'm not much of a history buff, so
That's if the British won.
no. This will be during
Cows how to
the
do
war.
tabletop gaming.
But there will be a subtle magic presence. If you've read the Elven Maker series by Orson Scott Card, I'm basing the magic system sort of off of that. And then I might throw in a couple of cryptids like werewolves and stuff, instead of having human-to-human battles too often. Just because I mean they're kids and it's a Catholic school and I got to tone it down a little bit. Yeah,
Cool.
that's probably the
You know-
most interesting thing in my life right now. Running a game for a bunch of kids.
You know what you should do? There's a book of like Wisconsin like monsters and folklore and stuff, and there's something about like the flying lizard man of remember where the fuck it was, but there was a story about a flying lizard man somewhere in the 70s. Like look into that. That could be fun to like tinker with.
Okay, well it's mostly East Coast stuff, so I'm going a little bit more gothic horror, but
Yeah. Well, South
that's
Carolina.
what I'm looking into.
South
You can get
Carolina
weird.
has a lizard man as well.
Oh, okay.
They may have to the South Carolina one, the Wisconsin one, they may have to battle it out.
Sure.
I'm not in South Carolina. Yeah.
Well,
I'm trying to keep it more roughly history based, but
close.
roughly.
Accidentally derailed this.
Speaking of Dustin, our technical genius of the night, why don't you tell us a little bit about
Technical genius, my ass. I can't program for shit. Well, I live in Milwaukee. I go to UW. I studied GIS and programming with interest in animals. So I want to do biology. I collect movies and pretty much whatever the fuck I feel like at this point. And so I know an awful lot about films, and I love talking about them. I just can't shut up most of the time, so this is good to have an outlet for that. I recently picked up the Masters of Horror box set, which is very crummily made, by the way. So, yeah, I've been revisiting that. So that's kind of what I'm doing with my time, is I fail to understand how to program shit in Python.
Alrighty. Well, listening folks that are out there, tune into Dark Coffin Classics as well. My name is David Streggy. I run this podcast called Inside Movies Galore. I also write on a blog called Milwaukee. So,
Movies Galore of Milwaukee.
Out next week. Far ahead. Out Helter Skelter next week.
Oh,
boy.
nice.
classic.
since
I wish I'd be there. I really want to watch it.
I still want to watch that thing with the lizard.
I suppose we can hold off on
No, don't
that
do that on my
one.
account. It's all good. I don't want to make you guys do that all the time.
They're coming back on all the time.
Y'all need to put the version of Alice I have in the lineup.
The only reason why I wanted to do it is because, well, you know.
Charles Manson died. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Actually, have y'all done the movie? Gosh, what was that? Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Do that
not
for
yet.
Christmas.
We haven't done that, but that'd be cool to do for.
For the December season. When it comes, I mean, sometime in December, that might be a great one. It's like one of the original slasher films, and also fits the season.
Definitely thinking of doing some Christmas ones coming up.
I get it.
Including
Wait,
one.
there's a lot of them. There's like Black Christmas, Silent Night, Deadly Night, Don't
Jingle
Open
all the
the
way.
I get them confused. Jingle all the way.
There's Krampus. There's Ginger Dead Man. Is it Ginger Dead Man or Ginger? I don't remember.
It's
Ginger Dead Man. I love that movie. They say
There
my
are
name in
3
it.
of those.
Well, there's
I love
that.
the third
There's
one out of all of them.
Actually, there are 4. Ginger Dead Man versus Evil Bong.
Actually, there's many more because they do a lot of crossovers with Evil Bong, and they're making a new Ginger Dead Man movie.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
Madness.
But we got possible more when December hits, and I know I want to touch on Black Christmas. There's a one from Wisconsin, Spring Christmas, that I might want to touch on because it's from Wisconsin. We'll definitely keep remembering Christmas and Deadly Night. The whole December month too.
Naughty.
So for Helter Skelter next week. So, let's keep it witchy.
If you take only one thing away from Silent Night, Dead of the Night, like that's it. Like, that's all I remember about the movie. I probably even have the wrong title.
In any case,
Good night.
Night.
Rock and roll all night and party every day.
Night.
Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, because that's a thing.
happy Thanksgiving all.
Thank you.
Yeah.